Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of The Atlas 6 by Olivie Blake. This book was voted on for me to read and review by my bibliothecary supporters. So every month my bibliothecary supporters vote in a poll for a book that I will read and review. So if you want to contribute to my content in that way, I will link the bibliothecary on the screen and down below. Now this is the traditionally published version of this book. If you are not familiar, this book was originally self-published. It was picked up by Tor. The scratching sound is, I believe, the cat trying to get into the room. It was picked up by Tor and was edited. Some things were changed. There are some posts online about how things were changed if you read the self-published version, etc. This is gonna be the first book in an adult fantasy trilogy that's like dark academia. So this follows 6 main characters, the Atlas 6, and these are all magicians. In this world they're called Medeans, and these are high-level magical adults that are chosen to potentially be recruited into the Alexandrian Society. In this world, the Library of Alexandria didn't burn. It is now a society that you can be a part of, an elite group, and every 10 years 6 people are potentially recruited. They sort of are initiated, I'll get into this part, for about a year, and then only 5 of them are chosen to move on. So we follow these people as they're being recruited and everything goes from there. So this book was very hyped in 2020 and a little bit in 2021 when it was self-published. It was kind of taking the world by storm, which is why it got picked up. But since then I've heard mixed reviews about this. So I went into this not really knowing how I was gonna feel, but I know that I do like a dark academia type setting and I do like morally gray characters. So let's hear how I felt about it. First off, we talk about the world building. For this being a dark academia, I was actually expecting there to be more of an academic world building. Although this book is largely vibes, it's not necessarily academic vibes. We spend a year with these characters. It's not very long of a book. This book is deceiving. This one is like 500 something pages, the arc. The actual book is like 300 something. The spacing in this one's wonky. But we spend a year with them. It goes by very quickly. We barely get to see actual academics happening. So if you like books that go over like classes and the different books that they're reading and things like that, this isn't really that. We hear about them doing magical things and sort of independent study type stuff, but it's actually way more about the character interactions, which I'll get into later. So the world, both in and out of the society, the magic exists, people know about it, there's like magical colleges, things like that, but you don't really get that like atmospheric, dark feeling world, in my opinion. As far as world building and descriptions, I don't feel that it's there. There's some elements, there's some snippets, but I really would have liked to have seen more. Also, the magic system isn't really, it's all wishy-washy, hand-wavy. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. All of our characters have sort of different magical abilities, whether there's, you know, like telepathy, an empath, different physical magics, things like that. But instead of it being sort of explained, which again I sort of expect from dark academia, it's supposed to be sort of academic in nature, it doesn't really go into it. It's just like, they can do things. You know, I'm like, okay, I mean, yeah, but not what I was expecting from this. Next, let me talk about our characters. Our characters, I think, are a mixed bag, and I think the characters and the writing are the 2 things that make people either love or hate this. All of our characters are unlikable in a pretty drastic way. They did grow on me as the book went on, but I will say for a book where we're in everyone's point of view at some point, it's told in 3rd person, but we follow like each character in like a chapter. While you were having them grow on you, sometimes it was like a little bit insufferable. Hard to like a lot of them. I'm fine with an unlikable protagonist, but having 6 of them essentially, I mean, honestly like 5, like there's some that are better than others, but it was a little rough at times. The big thing that kind of got me is the character interactions, or sort of like lack thereof. So there's plenty of character interactions. However, the relationships and how they are formed, a lot of it seems to be off page, not enough meat there for me, and I feel like the fandom has extrapolated a lot from the very little that we actually get in here for why any of these characters make sense, the shipping that happens between them, things like that. I will say this book is queer. A lot of the characters are bi, potentially gay. A lot of, again, some like vagueness. Some things aren't vague, some are, so that will get explored more in the rest of the series, I'm sure. That part's cool, but it's still like some characters that liked each other, I'm like, I don't know where this come from. I don't know. I also just felt like we didn't get enough time. I almost wish it was like a 500-page book like this looks to be, because a lot of stuff was very rushed. We follow them for this year of them kind of trying to like backstab each other, they're not being very nice to each other, like trying to form little alliances, things like that. That's all well and good. But we don't really get to see a lot of that, lots of really big jumps in time, don't get to see how these relationships are forming, things like that. So although that might have been a little more challenging because again, they aren't very likable necessarily at the beginning, they grow on you, or they grew on me a little bit. Again, I like an unlikable character. I'm sure there are people that got to the end of the book and still hated a lot of them. Next, I'm gonna talk about the plot and the writing. The other piece of this that can be a little bit insufferable is the writing. This writing style is very pretentious. When people talk about this, I've heard about people saying saying like it's very pretentious. It's written in a way that it knows it's a dark academia and the like pretentiousness of like academia, kind of. But a lot of times it will say things without having a ton of substance, or so many of these like poignant lines are strung together that they almost start to lose their meaning. This is not flowery writing. This is not descriptive. It's just a lot. It's so hard to explain if you don't read it. Literally read an excerpt of this book if you can, because people have asked me like, what does it mean to have this pretentious writing? You'll know it as soon as you read it. It just reads like someone that thinks they're really smart, basically, which I think is intentional. Like, I don't think Olivie Blake did that unintentionally and came off as pretentious. I think it's intentionally pretentious. I think it knows what it's doing. But I think that can hamper the flow a little bit and things like that. Also, a big chunk of it is not necessarily slow, medium paced. You're sort of trying to figure out what's going on with them as they're like sort of trying to backstab each other and form alliances and whatever. And then a lot of stuff gets sort of crammed into the end when we get a lot of reveals, which were interesting enough for me to want to continue, but also just it took its time kind of getting there. A lot of the earlier stuff almost meant like nothing in that case. Lots of things weren't explained, whatever. So this is a book, when I finished it, I really didn't know how I feel. I still don't quite know how I feel. However, the more that I talk about this, the more I'm like, I think I disliked this more than I liked it. I kind of said like a 3-star because I do think it has some merit. I do think it has some room to grow. I think a lot of the things that I didn't like were actually intentional things and not just like a failure to craft it properly. But at the same time, some of the things I just think didn't land and still needed a little bit more polishing than they maybe got. So I'm very torn. Originally I was like between a 3 and a 3.5. Now I'm like a 2.5 and a 3. I don't think I dislike it enough for it to be a 2, because those are books where I actively dislike the reading experience, and I didn't get to that with this. But yeah, it's right in the middle. I really think it's like a 2.5, honestly. 2.5 to 3, I don't know, it depends on the day. I am going to do a discussion about this book because I do think there's a lot of things, you know, that are starting out. This is the first book in a series. We're going to have more of this series, whatever. I do want to discuss that, characters, things like that, because again, I didn't hate this book. There are things that I liked. It's just that actually, I think this is it. This book had a lot of potential, and I think it didn't meet that potential. It's not expectations, because I didn't necessarily have expectations going into this book. There's been a lot of like conflicting opinions by the time I've gotten to it, so I didn't have like a high bar necessarily. But I think there was a lot of things that really had a lot of potential, the seeds of things that didn't meet it, at least within this book, but maybe it will as the series goes on. I will link my discussion for this on the screen. So comment below, let me know what you thought of the Atlas 6. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.